You know, the experts are always saying that a great marriage should plan things in order to improve on the marriage. You know, like date nights, daily communication, sex. But does planning make these things seem like a chore or does it add to the excitement? Stay tuned and we'll talk more about it.
Hey, I'm Rusty.
And I'm Heather.
And we're the Bryants, and this is the Redeemed Marriage Podcast.
We are here to encourage healthy marriages, strengthen wounded marriages, and begin the process of restoration to broken marriages.
We aren't licensed counselors, but we are a redeemed couple that loves the Lord and wants to help you journey through this messy, challenging, and fun part of life called marriage. Welcome back to another episode of the Redeemed Marriage Podcast. Rusty and Heather Bryant back with you for our weekly podcast, our weekly visit with you, our favorite people. Our favorite person, because you are listening. So before we get started, we've got to tell you about one exciting thing coming up. And we know that people are listening to this lots of different times.
Sure.
So you're not necessarily listening to this on the day that it comes out. But most of our listeners hit this on Monday when it comes out, Tuesday the next day. So a lot of people will be listening to this before Wednesday.
Mm-hmm. I'm so excited.
And look, again, if you're going back and you're listening to this, maybe you're listening to this 3 years from now. So this won't really apply to you. But we're going to tell you, so this Wednesday, we're having a special marriage resource for you where you're going to get a chance to meet with me and Heather over a Zoom call. So we're going to have a Zoom meeting, and it's going to be going to last maybe 30 minutes or so, but we're calling this Just a Cup of Coffee. Just a Cup of Coffee. So grab coffee. You can join with your spouse or by yourself, but we're going to chat for a few minutes, meet some of our listeners, and you're going to walk away with some marriage advice that you can take with you. So just a little short something that'll be fun and entertaining. But the only way that you can get the link to the Zoom call is to sign up for our email list. Mm-hmm. And you can do that by going to our website. It'll be in the show notes, but it's theredeemedmarriage.com. And it actually will pop up and give you a chance to sign up right there. But if you don't see that, over to the right-hand side, there's just a place to put your email address. And sometime before Wednesday, because it's going to be Wednesday, 8 p.m. Central Time, and we'll be meeting with you. So, if you're listening to this later, check in with us because maybe we'll be doing another one. Mm-hmm. So, we know we're speaking into the future. Mm-hmm. Kind of feels like we're in a little Back to the Future or something or another going on. But hopefully you guys are listening to this in almost real time. And so today, we're going to throw out this topic this is going to be kind of fun, actually. And I think we're going to tell on ourselves a little bit because it's something that we probably need to do a better job of, especially as we need to practice what we preach, I
That's
guess,
right.
is how we could say it. But I'll tell you how this topic in particular came up because I was listening to a podcast. It seems like we piggyback on, or it just makes, it gives us interesting things to think about when we're listening to other podcasts. But I was listening to one this week, and somebody had a marriage resource that was icebreakers to start conversations with your spouse when you go out on a date. And I'm going to tell you what. My first reaction to that was, oh my goodness, do we need icebreakers to have something to talk about in marriage? Mm-hmm. And it was stuff like, if you were stranded on a deserted island, what's the one item you would like?
Right.
Okay. I just gave myself away. But for you, when you hear stuff like that, when somebody, the marriage experts, us, when we make a suggestion, like that, what do you think? Because, what do you think when somebody says, hey, here's this resource, this tool, and this will help you if you use this.
Mm-hmm.
What's that do for you?
Well, I guess it would depend on how desperate I was for help in that area. I mean,
Okay.
You could genuinely be like, I'll try anything.
Yeah.
If you're that, if there's an area of your marriage that's in that much need of help, then you'll try anything at that point. But most of the time, I hear wah wah wah.
Well, okay. Well, here's the other thing. Our personalities are they're different. Like when you talk about planning as opposed to being spontaneous,
Mm-hmm.
which one are you?
Spontaneous.
What am I?
Planner.
So I am more the planner. You're more of doing things spontaneously. So when you hear somebody give advice to marriages like, hey, take this tool, and we're going to give some examples.
Sure.
So people are probably going, what are y'all talking about? What are y'all talking about? But like, for example, hey, you need to plan a date night once a week.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you as a spontaneous person, does that make it feel like to you, oh my gosh, then if we have to plan that, it's a chore. It's not fun.
It does.
So that's how that makes you feel?
Mm-hmm.
So there's people out there listening that are like that. So what do we say to them?
Right.
That's a question for you because you're the spontaneous person.
Well, I just kind of back to how I answered the other question. I think there's a season for that. I think that there are people that might need to plan a date night. But for those of us who are real spontaneous, it just feels really structured and it kind of takes the fun out of it.
Feels forced.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I started thinking about this a lot because there's so many different things that we as people that give marriage advice, we've got a ton of tools. And I know we kind of joke about the one we talk about all the time is our heart talk. The communication
that we
tool.
never did rename.
No, but we actually got some good suggestions.
Yeah.
So we need to go back and figure out which one we're going to use. But I think that, even that for us, we talk about the name of it making us cringe. But even just the rigid, like, steps and planning of it, it's a little bit cringy to us because we just don't, I think we both kind of prefer. Well, you prefer to be, spontaneous, and I prefer to look at it and go, I know it sounds terrible, but we don't need that help. We got this. But I think you nailed it when you said it depends on how desperate you are. Or not even desperate, it's just taking an inventory of everything and going, we really need some help in that area. And I started thinking about it, and I thought that it really applies to almost like a diet. Because if you're on
half the people just turned you off.
No, they didn't. They probably kept it on. They're like, I need to listen to this talking about diet. I think about a diet, and when you recognize that you need to lose weight and you choose to go on a diet, you're choosing to fix a problem, hopefully not immediately, but like as fast as you can. You're going to put effort into it right then. You're going to follow the rules of whatever the diet is, for whatever you're doing. But the goal is not to be on that diet for the rest of your life.
Right.
It's to jumpstart your healthy eating and your healthy weight loss. And I would even say that exercise is like that too. Because you can choose and say, hey, I need to do better at exercise, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wake up every morning at 5 o'clock, and I'm going to go to the gym, and I'm going to work out. Well, it becomes a habit at some point, and then it just becomes part of your life, and you don't necessarily, have to have a trainer, or because you learn how to do things on your own.
Right.
So as I started thinking about all these different areas of marriage, I was like, well, it's kind of the same thing. Like, it may feel like something that you dread doing, or it might feel like a chore or something that you have to do, or it's forced. But really, those tools are there just to jumpstart you.
Sure.
And to jumpstart you into helping improve that area of your marriage until you get to a point where you don't have to be so rigid.
Right. But,
unless you like it. Some people like it.
Yeah.
So,
well, and let me kind of take a different twist on that, if you don't mind.
Yep.
You know how, I've done several things to try to diet and lose weight. And I've done extreme things, like going on a plan where I just drink shakes, or like extreme things that I've tried and different programs that I've tried. And then what happens is I do great and lose all that weight. But then when I start going back to quote normal life and eating regular foods, it all just comes back on. And how I want to tie that in is this. If we take these things that they tell us and make them extreme and say, oh, we're going to do this, and it's all in just this huge shift, then when we try to come off of those, we just kind of crash and burn. So it has to be a gradual, something that we can sustain for life, like with healthy eating. You want to lose weight by eating healthy and making good choices, and making simple choices that are easily done, that you can then say, I can see myself doing this for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, we want it to jumpstart, but you don't want to be so rigid or so extreme with it that you're not going to be able to sustain that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just a little bit of different look from the diet part, that you want to dive into these things and do them well, but you want to do them in a way that you could see continuing them if need be.
Yeah. I think that one of the big ones, so some people may be thinking, what kind of stuff are you talking about? One of the big ones that came out a few years ago was the Love Dare. Mm-hmm. And there was a movie about it that Kirk Cameron was in. But the book itself, the Love Dare, I think it was just a challenge of like a 40-day challenge. And during those 40 days, it actually told you something to do for your spouse.
Right.
So there were all these things. They were almost like random acts of kindness.
Right.
However, not very random when somebody's telling you to do the 40 things. But that's sort of the idea, is that if you're really struggling, if you're struggling to serve your spouse and you're struggling to find ways to show kindness and to do things special for your spouse, well then, 40-day challenge. And where I think that you run into, I guess maybe this is where some of the conflict comes in, is if I come to you and say, hey, I'm doing the 40-day Love Dare challenge. And then at that point, you're just like, well, this is kind of forced. So there's got to be, what's the balance there?
Yeah, it's hard. That is hard because you have to go from somebody telling you what to do, from it actually being, something that comes from your heart.
Yeah.
And, some of and we definitely are not knocking any of these things.
For sure not.
They are all wonderful tools that I know have helped, thousands and thousands of marriages. Like,
right.
I know that to be true. But you have to find out what works for you and your spouse.
Right.
And that might be different. No, it definitely is different for everybody. Even as we talk about things that worked for us, somebody else might try that and be like, yeah, that's not working for us. Where we don't really like to schedule a date night. There might be couples that save their marriage is having a scheduled time. So I think it's doing and trying different things and what works for you and your spouse.
I remember I read the Love Dare several years ago.
It was a great movie.
Yeah, the movie was great. The book was good, and I didn't love all the different things that you were supposed to do in the 40 days, and so I actually kind of made my own, and I was trying. I gave myself a challenge that I was going to do one random act of kindness every day. I don't think I put a starting and a stopping point on it, but honestly, it did become like a chore.
Like, what am I going to do today?
Yeah, what am I going to do today? And then it really wasn't. But I do think that it sort of jump started and kind of spurred me to at least think about, what are some things that I could be doing, just small things, every day. And I mean, there were some times where it was, they were really small, like I knew that your car didn't have gas in it, so I took it and filled it up with gas. Well, I still do that today.
Right.
So,
Sure.
so those are just things that I think that those tools sort of helped me to always, lifestyle changes and to live that way.
And I will say, to this point, you are a naturally very giving person, and I think that you try to think beyond yourself. And how you can serve other people, not just me, but how you can serve other people. I think that becomes naturally to you. That is natural for you. But I don't think that's natural for a lot of people. And so, like, you might have to use a tool that helps you with something that doesn't come natural to you. And somebody else may recognize, I'm really good at this, but I'm not good at this. So let me find something that can help me in this area.
Yeah.
If you're naturally strong at something or your strength is something, then you probably don't need a lot of help in that area.
Yeah.
But if you know that you have an area of weakness, I've talked about that book before, Saving Your Marriage Alone. And like, that's one of the things it focuses on is what can you do to be purposeful in serving your spouse or showing, being purposeful and showing them how much you love them. And I remember reading that the first time, and there were a lot of things in there that didn't come natural to me. And so I was very thankful for that tool to help me, where somebody else may read it and go, yeah, I do that already.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think the thing that we want to, so here's how we're going to, finish these last several minutes is we're going to kind of go through some things, because what I want you as a listener to hear is, if there's an area of your marriage that you feel like, man, we really need some work on in that area, then that's an area that you may need to take a tool of some sort and say, okay, well, for the next, 2 weeks, let's try this. Even if it feels forced or uncomfortable, but maybe it'll spark something in that area. So we mentioned the date night thing. There's a lot. We hear the marriage experts and marriage retreats that we've been to, and they say you try to, there's a lot of different ideas out there, but try to go on a date night once a week. Try to go on an overnight outing once a month. And try to go on an annual trip together, just you and your spouse. So if you struggle with finding time to just have alone time, and I think that this is pretty crucial to people that have young children.
Sure.
Because there's just no alone time and there's no time to connect. So maybe that is something that, and you just need to start with, hey, where can we go out once a week and plan it? Like you say, every Thursday night or whatever, we're going to get a babysitter and we're going to.
And if you can't afford a babysitter, do something after the kids go to sleep and have a date night on the sofa with movie and a popcorn. It's just something to where you are purposeful in spending time just the two of you.
Yeah, and I would even take this a little step further because there are couples out there that get in a rut as far as dates, and they just think that a date is going out to eat and going to a movie, or maybe just even going out to eat, which that's great. Some people love just going out to eat and just sitting and talking. But if you're one of those that's like, no, I mean, we need to find something fun to do and something that we enjoy doing, there are tons of resources out there.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about this book before, but Ted Cunningham's book, Fun Loving You, it just talks about how to bring the fun back into your marriage. And I know it has actually some date night ideas in there and some things that you can do just that are different than just going out to eat and going to a movie or sitting on the couch and watching a movie. So, use those resources. And maybe it is that you go and you find a book like that and you say, okay, well, we're going to try this for a month and see, see how it can rekindle that and make sure that we're getting that time together. I would say a big one is just the communication. We're not giving a lot of real specific examples because we may give some more specific examples on Wednesday.
Yep.
But when you're talking about having communication problems, which who doesn't have communication problems? But if you're in a spot where you're like, we really need to improve our communication skills, then that's when you need to take these, as hard as they may feel to do them, the heart talk. We talked about several weeks ago, Fanos, where you use that acrostic, Fanos, and you just, and you talk through each one of those things. You can go back and listen to that one. Weekly discussions where you plan a time, like every Sunday night, you say, we're spending 15 minutes together and we're going to talk through the week or what, if you have to be rigid and set a time so that you can jumpstart that, then do it. Like, that's okay.
And there's a lot of people who will love that and want to continue that.
Yeah.
Every single Sunday night, let's talk about our week or talk about, and it may work for you and keep doing it. That's awesome. But then there's going to be others who like the heart talk. We've talked about this before, that it was so awkward and so weird, but we pushed through that and learned how to do it. And now it just comes second nature and we don't have to call it that. It just is, we recognize what it is and we just keep rolling.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be what works for you and your spouse. It doesn't have to be exactly a certain way.
And I would be willing to, I know this, I would almost say I know this for a fact. There's going to be certain things that one spouse feels like we struggle in this area, so we should try this, and the other one's going to be like, oh, Lord, no, please, no. But this is one of those things that you need to be willing and open. So, if after we finish talking tonight, if Heather and I are laying in bed and we're just evaluating our own situation, and Heather says, when we go out to eat, I feel like, on a date, I feel like we're just constantly talking about our children, or we're just talking about the same things. What can we do? Well, then that's when maybe the icebreaker thing.
Pull that,
like you find that resource and you say, okay, well, next time we go out to eat, we're going to sit down and we're going to go through these little icebreakers just to start giving ourselves something more fun to talk about. So that's my challenge is for you just to be willing. If a spouse says, I feel like we need to work on this area, then find that tool and work on it. I think a big one is just the physical relationship and sex, and especially when there's kids around, because little kids, because it's like, when are we ever going to have time to do this? When can we be alone? And those are the times where it's okay to put it on the calendar, And I mean, that can build excitement and anticipation. And, even I know that there's a lot of people out there that have a really hard time even talking about that subject to each other. And man, there was a great resource that we used, the to Ignite menu
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
Ted
yeah, yeah.
Cunningham
Mhm.
Ted Cunningham did, and it was 52 questions. And
We answered them in the car. We were traveling
yes,
from
we were
one place.
and it was so much fun
Yep.
because you find out things that your spouse needs and wants in that area, and it's done in a very it's fun and it's entertaining, but you have a list of things. It was like a menu, and you had the appetizer section and the main course and the dessert, and they got a little bit more risque every time, and it's just fun. So, those kind of things I think are just great if you just need to jumpstart that area. Can you think of any other things just right off that like people, I'm even thinking of it doesn't even have to, this is part of marriage, but like family dinners. People, we all sit and complain about, oh my goodness, we never get a chance to eat at home. Well, plan it, just say, hey, for the next 2 weeks, these 2 nights each week, we are all sitting down at the table. We're putting our phones away, and we're not going to grab fast food. We're going to cook. We're going to eat at home.
Cook together.
Those are just some great ways to plan. It's not spontaneous because you're planning it, but it helps to just create a lifestyle of that.
Yep.
So,
and with the weather being so beautiful outside, you can plan adventures together, walking or hiking or bike riding or picnics or things like that.
Yeah. I have another great idea.
I'm ready.
People can listen to our podcast together.
Yeah, they can.
We actually hear from a lot of our listeners that say, we just lay in bed at night sometimes, put our headphones in and listen to them together. I got one earbud.
Which makes me laugh. I'm like, that's a visual. Like, let's share the headphones. Laying there looking at the ceiling.
Yeah. I think that, the whole gist of this is that we feel just as uncomfortable sometimes, even on the things that we are recommending, but we realize the value and the importance of finding out the things that are not great in your marriage. So that's our challenge, is take this inventory, come up with that one thing that you would like to improve, and then just talk to your spouse and say, hey, let's try this for the next couple of weeks or for the next month.
And pick something that you feel like you need to work on, not something your spouse needs to work on.
Good.
Because if you go to your spouse and say, hey, I really think we need to work on this, and it's something they have an issue with, it's going to be like, okay.
That's a great point. Like seriously, something that you need to work on, and you can go to them and say, hey, I don't do good in this area. So can we try this and see if it helps me to be better in this area? I think that's a great point. So, so everybody give something a try this week. And we'd love to hear from you. If there's something, when we start posting stuff on social media this week, if there's something that you have tried or something that you do, even plan on a regular basis, and you still do it, let us know. Give us some ideas and some tips, because everybody needs a little bit of help in this area, even if it's taking something that's planned and running with it. So, we'd love to hear from you, because we're learning in this area too, because like we said at the beginning, we're not great at it, but we value it and we understand its importance. So great being with you again this week. Be sure to take this and share with your friends. Tell your friends about our podcast, and then if you get a chance, give us that honest rating and review, because it helps us to get in front of more people. So until next week, we
hope to see you Wednesday night.
Yeah, hopefully see you Wednesday night. But if you're listening to this at some other time, we'll catch you next episode. See you later.